I have a very special guest today because he is an activist and also a very knowledgeable individual. I just want to go back a few years. A few years means that I was alive during the Second World War. Fortunately, my family, my immediate family, was not in Europe. We were in Lima, Peru, where my late father was the chief rabbi. However, after the war, we first learned what happened really during those terrible years. All our family that remained in Europe was exterminated. And I remember the photographs, the movies that General Eisenhower at that time insisted that be done because people are going to deny afterwards what he and his generals and soldiers saw, not only about the deceased, those that survived, what they looked like, human skeletons. To tell the truth, I thought for a number of years afterwards, that was the end of anti-Semitism. Once the Western world, the entire world, will learn what really happened during the Second World War. You know, many people tell me that the Inquisition was very terrible. But I say, of course it was very terrible, but it wasn't the same. At the time of the Inquisition, you could opt to convert. If you said you become a Christian, you stayed alive. Germans didn't leave any exit, any alternative. If one of your grandparents was Jewish, that was good enough for you to be sentenced to death. That was terrible. I was sure that anti-Semitism, the way we knew it, that's the end of it. Well, obviously, I'm very naive. I don't deny it. This is what I really thought. However, reality is altogether different. We see a resurgence of anti-Semitism all over the world. And what is very worrisome for us, of course, is the fact that in the United States, where Jews have lived, I think, the greatest epoch in their exiled life in the United States. Even in the United States, we see many things. I don't want to enumerate everything. So many people want to make us aware of that. And another point, they criticize the Jewish leadership that somehow does not want to recognize that there is a resurgence of anti-Semitism. Why is that so? We're going to discuss it. And I have here an expert in the matter. It's for me a great honor to share this conversation with Dr. Charles Jacob. I speak, but he has a lot of history to show of what he has done already and what he is doing right now. Dr. Jacobs, welcome to this conversation.
Well, thank you very much for having me. Rabbi, you were not the only naive person in the Jewish world. None of us could have imagined what has come about after the Holocaust. My wife's parents, Oliver Sholem, the best people I ever knew in my life, where my father-in-law was in Auschwitz, my mother-in-law was a slave labor camp. They're from Poland. They survived and they lived a wonderful life after that. But I heard all the stories. So you're absolutely right. We thought it was the end of anti-Semitism, but as we now know, and as we should have known, anti-Semitism is a virus that morphs. It has variants. So the original variant was they hated Jews because of our religion. We were the Christ killers, the deniers of the truth of Christianity. Then they hated us because of our race. The Hitlerians, had racial science, and we were termites.
By the way, Farrakhan just called us termites.
Yeah.
Farrakhan.
Yeah, Farrakhan.
Just did it.
He says, I'm not an anti-Semite, I'm
right.
anti-termite, he said.
Right.
I know about Farrakhan very well. We could talk about Louis Farrakhan. And there's a way to defeat him too if the Jewish leadership would wake up. But anyway, now, as Rabbi Jonathan Sachs of Sholem used to say, now the new variant is they hate us because of our state. And it's no different. It's no different, except the Jews themselves were confused by this. And many of them who had lots of criticisms of Israeli policy allowed the defamation of Israel to continue without fighting it, because they thought, these Jews on the left thought that, listen, if you push Israel and you push Israel, it'll make it better. We're doing it for your own good. Meanwhile, now that we've seen 25, 30 years later, after all of this, Israel has become portrayed as the cruelest of nations. And if you could just look at how many times the United Nations condemns us compared to all the rest of compared to everyone else, that's the definition of anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism, the easiest way to define anti-Semitism is a disproportionate focus on Jewish behavior, negative focus on Jewish behavior. So, while we have the apartheid wall, so-called, there are over 20 countries in the world where there's a barrier separating conflicting populations. Nobody mentions those as the apartheid. We have the apartheid wall. We are said to be in Israel a cruel nation, and they count every dead Arab in conflict with us as like a huge loss. The actual fact is that Arabs have killed Arabs 1,000 times more than for silly reasons, for simple reasons, than Jews have unfortunately had to fight and kill Arabs in defense. So this is the new anti-Semitism. The new anti-Semitism is the focus on the Jewish state. And unfortunately, now, as you say, in the world, is a perfect storm against us. There are 4 ideological founts of anti-Semitism. Of course, the right, white supremacists, they have been here, they will always be there. And they're there. They have guns. They will shoot Jews. It is true. Then we have the left. And the left now has redefined who the Jews are in America and in the West. No longer are we belonging amongst the pantheon of victim peoples, next to the blacks and then the feminists and then the gays and then whoever. No longer do we belong in that bunch, which most of Judaism wanted to belong in, at least in America. We're now kicked out. We're now redefined as white adjacents, as we're the 1%, we're privileged whites. And the people who took our chair are the Muslims, because they're defined as, victim peoples, people who are attacked by so-called Islamophobia. So all of a sudden, this kind of turned upside down, and many, many Jews in America are totally shocked right now. And I have to say, I think the reason that they're shocked is because their Jewish leadership has failed to educate them about the nature of anti-Semitism, about the enemies we have that are not on the right, because to fight the ones on the right, you see, is simple and easy. There's no conflict. No Jew inside of the big tent is going to tell you, don't fight the Nazis. Of course. And we're going to have lots of allies on the outside of the Jewish tent to fight the Nazis. That's easy. But what do you do when the Jewish leadership had a strategy which was to embrace the left, and now the left, it's the very same people whose causes we have supported with our money, with our energy, with our dedication, with our passion, who are now kicking us in the teeth. So we have a Jewish leadership that has painted us in a corner. They don't know what to do. They're in shock. And the people I work with now think that the most important thing to do is to do whatever we can to pressure Jewish leadership, to challenge them, to change their strategy, to wake up, to declare that there is a crisis, to say we have to develop other friends, to explain left-wing, and to very clearly explain what Islamic anti-Semitism is, because that's the big taboo. They're all afraid to say what's right in front of their eyes. We had this thing in Texas. A jihadi stormed the synagogue in Colleyville in Texas. He did it for Islamic reasons, And yet the Jews are terrified to say that there's something inside of Islam that's problematic and let's look at it. All of these Jewish leaders want to cling to the left, and what that has meant is that they have to develop interfaith dialogue with these Muslims, with these Muslim groups, many of whom are very radical. And these Jewish leaders want to have this relationship so dearly, so fervently, that they would never want to ask the simplest question in the world. What are you teaching in your mosque, in your congregation, in your Islamic center about who the Jews are? They don't want to ask that question. They flee from that question because there's not really a good answer to that in the majority of cases. So here we are. What are we to do? I've spent the last 35 years of my life fighting what I would say are the external enemies of the Jews, which are the professoriate, the media, now the high school curriculum, the Islamists, the Farrakhaners, and the left-wing Jews themselves. And I have come to the conclusion, along with my team, that all of the best Jews in the world who fought those fights, they're the best ones. They're the best ones. We may not prevail unless we turn around Jewish leadership. It may not be enough to be able to prove on a daily basis that the media lies against Israel. It may not be enough to show that the professoriate on America's college campuses is hostile to the Jewish state and to Jewish students who support the Jewish state. They intimidate them. We've made films of this. My partner, Avi Goldwasser, the filmmaker, and I, we've made films, Columbia Unbecoming, J Street Challenge, Hate Spaces. We've tried to educate the Jewish community about this. But without a Jewish leadership in the mainstream, and by that I mean the Anti-Defamation League, which is supposed to be our Defense Department, the federations, the Jewish Communal Relations Councils, the JCRCs, and most of the rabbis, not the Orthodox, most of the rabbis, if they don't change, if they're not pushed or convinced or persuaded or shamed or humiliated to change their strategy, I don't know that we can prevail.
You know, Dr. Jacobs, there's some people that want to equate what is going on in the United States today to what was happening in Germany in the 30s. You know, Jews felt we are German of Mosaic faith. You know, the Reform movement came into being because of theological considerations, but there were also social and political considerations. They wanted to turn the synagogue into a Jewish church. The rabbi should wear some kind of dress similar to a Protestant minister. His speech should be in German. No mention of Jerusalem, of Israel. We are German. You know, this is what some people are arguing about the leadership in the United States and also American Jewry. Many American Jews, maybe most of them feel we are Americans. Nowadays, according to the Pew studies, very few go to synagogues. Very few identify even with the Reform movement. Many have simply lost all real connection to anything that has to do with tradition or something like that. This is why some explain, why did the Jews fight together with the Black community in Alabama? You had very important rabbis, you know, Abraham Joshua Heschel marching together with Martin Luther King. We defend minorities. Why? Because we are Americans. We are not a minority. We belong to the American culture. This is a melting pot and we are there being diluted. But there are many Jews that don't want to be diluted. They want to retain their identity. You know, American Jews, you say many American Jews on the left, because the left promotes democracy from the lips out. You know, everybody is equal opportunity. Then, of course, and something I learned from you, not only equal opportunity, equal results. I heard you say that some minorities, it's not sufficient that they have opportunities. You must make sure that they're equal result. I just heard President Biden is about to name a new Supreme Court justice because one of them is retiring. And he promised it'll be a Black woman. In other words, you choose somebody because of the color of his skin. That is not racism. I think that is absolute racism. You choose somebody because she is a woman, or you choose the most qualified candidate that you can think of that will bring about justice. So many of our misconceptions also, the fact that we feel that we are as American as everybody else, and we have lost a little bit of our Jewish singularity, brings us to this condition as well. And there's similarity with what happened in Germany.
I think there is some similarity of what happened in Germany, particularly about the desire, the fervent desire upon many Jews to flee the burdens of Judaism by assimilation, right? And in America, you could do it easily because it's not like even Europe. People used to say, you know, that either they want to kill us or they want to marry us, which is worse? Well, in America, they used to want to marry, they still want to marry us. So just a few points that you said to comment on what you said.
All right.
So first of all, Jewish particularity, which is Judaism. I mean, in Judaism, we have particularity and we also have universality, and there's a balance. And, you know, if I'm not for myself, but if I'm only, we know this, okay? But what now has become the reigning ideology in the West is universalism. And except for the Blacks, except for the minorities, they can have their particularity because as victims, you know, but we can't. And so these left-wing Jews who want to duck and evade the burdens of Judaism, they want to do it by becoming universalists, right? And they say, the universalists say to us, you small-minded people, you only care about what's happening to your tribe, but I care about the whole world. So therefore, I'm morally superior. I'm more virtuous than you. This is a foolish and silly mistake that they're making, and they've made it in the 30s. The German Jews who thought that this was a protective cover for them and who were terribly, tragically awakened by reality. That is happening here. God forbid, not so, you know, and not such a terrible result. If we keep fighting, it won't be that result. The other thing you mentioned is most Jews, and I think most people in the world, are classical liberals in the sense that we believe in equality of opportunity. That is, it should not be because of your race or your color or your creed or your even sexual preference these days. That should not be the thing that holds you back. You should have equal opportunity to get wherever you want to go. Now, the left has flipped this into a demand for equity, and that is the exact results. So it means that if one group has more lawyers and doctors in it than another group, the only reason that happened is that these guys oppressed these guys, because there can't possibly be a reason why any group would be behind. I mean, you can't talk about their culture, you can't talk about their habits. You couldn't say, for example, well, if they had good study habits, they might do as well as the guys. You can't say that because that is racism. So the people who are going to suffer the most from this equity, there's two kinds of people. The first is the Jews, because we're successful, and success has now been rebranded as a sin. Prosperous, we're prosperous. That must mean you stole. Success, that must mean you screwed the guy who's not successful. We are going to be the target of this equity thing. And of course, the other thing is general society. Somebody, I just read an article yesterday, called it, we now are going to live in an idiocracy. It's going to be run by idiots. It's going to be an idiocracy, because it's not going to be, you're going to be the surgeon, because God forbid this should happen. Oh, well, now it's already happened that medical treatment in New York City for COVID is being ranked by race. So you could be a Black billionaire and you'll be in front of the line of a poor white lady from Appalachia. So the victims of equity are going to be the Jews and the rest of society. And you can't get Jewish leaders to fight the progressive wokeists. You can't get them to do it because they still cling to this notion. They don't understand that classic liberalism, which actually was good for everybody, for us too, right, has been swallowed by the progressives. And they're clinging to, oh, they'll love us if we keep giving them more support for their causes. This is where the Jewish leadership is. It's disgusting, it's dangerous, and they have to be moved. And that's what we all have to do. Now, I know, even given what you said, the terrible things about the numbers of assimilated Jews in America, the intermarriage, the falling away from, the not caring about Israel, all of that is true, but still there are 30%, I guess, I estimate, my friend Melanie Phillips and Caroline Glick, they estimated also, 30% of the Jews in America who think like we do. Not that are Orthodox, but who think like Zionists, like Jews, okay? Mm-hmm. We have to get that 30% organized to challenge the Jewish leadership that is leading us down a dark alley at the end of which is some guy with a baseball bat. And that's what we're doing.
You know, we are, according to many, living already the decline of the United States as the first power in the world. It is not only a question of military power, it is also a question of civilization, of culture, American music, sports, dominating many, many different scenarios in the world. And this happens with other, in the past, empires. The United States is not an empire, was never a colonizing country, but you can see somehow the decline. And maybe this is the way history works. However, when I read history, there are external factors that bring about the decline of a power, because there's another one that emerges and surpasses. But there's also an internal factor. The power somehow starts questioning its own morality, its own culture, its own principles. And I see this happening in the United States. You know, the idea of a nuclear family is being challenged. You know, Judaism did not start in Mount Sinai. Judaism started with Abraham and Sarah, with a family, with Isaac and Jacob. Eventually, we went to Mount Sinai, but we were already equipped. We were already ready to accept the commandments. It was born from a family unit. And if many want to argue, one of the reasons that Jews survived all these years of persecution, exile, according to the late Salo Baron, if I recall correctly, he once estimated that were it not for all these assassinations and pogroms, there should have been at least 200 million Jews in the world today. If they cannot stomach 14 million, imagine what the world would be like with 200 million Jews. It would be, you know, how many doctors we'd have all over the world. The idea is that there's some problems, internal problems in the United States. I'll give you a little example, which I mentioned many a time. My wife has some medical problems, and a few months ago, she went to a new doctor. And when you go into a doctor's office for the first time, it takes you half an hour because you have to fill out 10 pages of whatever. Okay, under sex, there were 6 options. One option was sex at birth. Sex at birth. What? Where are we? Where are we? But that is only one aspect of it. You know, I know that in New York hospital, the doctor cannot say that this woman is pregnant. This person is pregnant.
Yeah.
It's not a woman that is pregnant. It's a person, an individual. We are, I think, stretching certain things, and we are entering new mores. And I think this is a tremendous malady. And this is what we are suffering in our society today. The 1984 George Orwell had all the words had a meaning that is really contrary. Today you say you are racist. For whatever it is, immediately you are disqualified. You are given some kind of etiquette This is what you are, regardless of your arguments. Students can no longer participate in university, as you showed, and I saw part of what you did with the Columbia movie about the students that some of them didn't want to appear on camera because they were afraid of repercussions afterwards. That's my alma mater also. I also went to Columbia University. I don't remember that at all happening, even though I didn't take any Jewish courses in Columbia. I took something altogether different, but there was no such atmosphere, and this has changed tremendously what's going on. As far as the Jewish leadership, I somehow feel they're afraid to say that there is anti-Semitism, that this will create more anti-Semitism. They're really afraid to show that something is being done against Jews because we are Americans. We are Jewish in some of our manifestations, but we're not Jews. We're Americans. So if you
let me
oh, good.
Okay, so permit me to say it a little bit differently.
Go ahead.
So they are not afraid to say that right-wing racists are against Jews. They make money when they say this. They are not at all afraid. The problem is that they're afraid to say the left is against Jews, the black nationalists are against Jews. I mean, you can, unfortunately, people watching this can see a variety almost weekly of black people beating up Jewish people in the streets of New York, right?
Oh, yes.
But the Anti-Defamation League doesn't want to touch it. Okay, the federations, they don't want to touch it. And they certainly don't want to say anything about the Islamic threat, Islamic anti-Semitism, because A, they're afraid of. They're afraid of the Muslims. But also, they don't want to be kicked out of the left, which has embraced the Muslims. So this is the problem. And right now, the Jewish leadership in America, I think, is in shock. I think now is the time we need to push them to wake up and to have a strategy that deals with the reality as it is, not with the delusions and illusions that they have made in their heads that they would like it to be. So I think, by the way, the suicide of the West, which you're describing, and one of the most juicy way to describe it, as you did, is the gender fluidity business, right? Boys can be girls and girls can be boys, and anybody can be, and there's 6 categories. I don't know what I would have filled. I would have said, if I was your wife and I had to fill it, I would say, you didn't get mine. There's 8. You missed a couple. But so what is it about this? A lot of scholars are looking at the suicide of the West. It's not just in America; it's all in Western Europe. And part of the reasons they say are the collapse of Christianity, part of which is Christian guilt for the Holocaust, right? There are a lot of people who saw what the Christians did, say, how could I be, then there is, we have in the Jewish tradition that the Christians also adopted a bit, this a self-criticism. We Jews believe in self-criticism, and it's from a religious point of view. You're supposed to say, I'm not my Torah perfect self. I'm not, and I need to confess it to myself and to my God so that I can become better. Okay. Other cultures don't have this. In Islam, the idea is that if you admit to being wrong, it's a weakness. You should never, honor, it has to do with honor shame cultures. You have to maintain your honor. And if you're dishonored, you have to kill to, whatever. The West has gotten into self-criticism in a way that is sick, in a way that says, I did bad things, but if somebody says, well, compared to what? As you mentioned before, Rabbi, America has done bad things. We had slaves, but we and the English led abolitionist movements. We stopped it. Not so in the Arab world. There's now 5 nations in Africa where Muslims and Arabs have black slaves. So we don't say when we're doing self-criticism, compared to what? Are we so bad that we don't deserve defense? And that's where the left has pushed this self-criticism into a poison pill for our youth, because our youth thinks we've been tainted by our past, and there's not a way out of this, and we don't deserve to defend ourselves. This is the biggest problem, and there's a response to this. There are now people who are fighting back about this, and there's a lot of them, but the people who have captured American institutions, from the universities and the high school curriculum and the liberal churches, and now the left wing of the Democratic Party, they are these progressives who will tell you America was born in sin. And if you believe America was born in sin, why would you ever join an army to fight? Why would you ever stick up for America when she's being defamed? This is a big civilizational crisis, and the Jews are being caught up in them, as always, the Jews are the canary in the coal mine.
You know, Dr. Jacobs, I came to the United States for the first time in 1947. At that time, Blacks used to sit in the back of the buses in the South.
Yeah.
At that time, there was official discrimination with schools and what have you. And there's been a tremendous revolution in the United States benefiting the Black population, and rightfully so, with integration and all sorts of things that have been done. Yet, we are supposed to bear the responsibility, the guilt of what happened 200 years ago when we did all the contrary. My generation, I wasn't an activist in it, I was just an onlooker, saw how American society is progressing toward rights for everybody. There is some kind of social discrimination. I don't want to deny it. You know, I also discriminate socially. I'll give my cousin the job before I give it to somebody else. I discriminate from a family point of view. I discriminate from a point of view of friends. I know him to be honest, so I'll choose him instead of a stranger. There is some kind of discrimination, but legal discrimination by color or what have you, that is out. Why are we reminded constantly with these changes of statutes and whatnot, trying to rewrite history? This is not, the independence wasn't really in 1776. There's another date for it. It reminds me of 1984, you know,
yeah.
that
Yes.
Suddenly what you said, that's not it. You mean something altogether different.
Yeah. Look, if somebody were trying to destroy the United States, they could find no better weapon than to have racial divides, and to have whites and blacks hate each other, and to have blacks feel that whites hate them, which is not true. We voted for Obama twice, right? America voted for a black president.
You have to underline twice. Once you can say you voted for him just to show that a black can be, but you voted again for him.
Yes.
There you are.
Right.
You can't use that argument.
But you see, if you listen to the leftists, we still have unconscious racism. You know, we don't even understand how racist we are. If we would understand only how racist we were, we would hate ourselves. And I sound like Jackie Mason, but that's the way it is. And I have to say that they have stolen our children in the colleges, on the campuses. They have stolen our children. And it's kind of understandable in a way. Our children are born into a wealth that they know they didn't deserve. Like most middle-class families, our children, you know, they come down for breakfast, they open up the pantry, it's manna from heaven. They didn't work for it. They didn't worry about the rains to grow the crops. Anything they want, they have. And then they look across the world and they see poor people, many of whom are darker skinned, and they say to themselves, why do I deserve what I have? And why doesn't he or she have what I have? And the first thing they learn is you can't think about race, and nobody teaches them about culture. Nobody teaches them that some cultural habits are better than others. And we were lucky to get the ones we have. You know, we were lucky to have the ancestors that we have. that adopted and accepted these cultural norms. And these other people, it's too bad that, well, why don't they come here and learn from us? Well, you can't say that, that's racist. So there's a confusion between race and culture that that confusion is purposely injected into the American educational system so that they're in a box. I have all these riches, those poor people who are darker skinned don't have them. The only possible conclusion I can make is that I did something, or my ancestors did something wrong to them to keep them that way. And if we can't talk ourselves out of that box, we're going to have a race war in America.
You know, Dr. Jacobs, there have been many revolutions, industrial revolution in the world that changed many things. Nowadays, you will have electric cars that are sort of going to challenge the other type of machines, disruptive changes that happen in society. To my mind, as a parenthesis, I'll tell you that I'm afraid of these vehicles that are not manpower, that can someone can in front of my window and suddenly boom, shoot me. Aside from that, I think that the internet is the biggest revolution of our times. We're next to artificial intelligence that is going to be a tremendous factor. But right now, I think the internet, tremendous change. You know, you have access to the biggest libraries in the world. I remember what a great acquisition had the Encyclopedia Britannica. That was tremendous. I don't know if anybody who has today books, the Encyclopedia Britannica, I don't know if it's printed anymore. You know, you go into the internet, you ask Dr. Google, Rabbi Google, he'll answer any Jewish question, any kind of question. Everything is available. You cannot say nowadays that people living in certain parts of the world don't have access. Everybody has a cell phone under the sun, practically. I know I lived in Lima, Peru. Did I mention that to you? We did not have a telephone. I remember it was a holiday when we acquired what is today called a landline. You picked up the receiver, you had to wait for a couple of minutes until you got a line. And many a time, once you started speaking, you were speaking to more than one person, not only the one you called, somebody else was in the line. Also, it was tremendous because people could call you already. Nowadays, I have an intelligent phone. I can speak to China. I can speak to you. I don't know exactly where you are by your number. Maybe you're in Boston or something like that. I don't know exactly where you are. Here we are speaking by Zoom. This is available to everybody, so that it is a question also to teach people how to use what is really available for you. You can acquire new skills. You can, in YouTube, ask him, how do I repair God knows what? Anything under the sun that you want, you will find immediately. You don't have to pick up a book and start looking, an index, nothing. Just type in something and you'll have it immediately. So that actually civilization is trying to equalize us, to give us all opportunities. And I go back to what you mentioned. I heard you say that equal opportunity, but you want equal results, regardless of the preparation of somebody else. If he doesn't have an equal result, that means you are doing whiteness. I never heard that before, except for the last few months. I didn't know the word existed. You know, you are born mea culpa. You know, it's the original sin. We are born, you know, according to Judaism, there is no original sin, you know, but according to Christianity, there is such a thing. According to the left, there's also original sin. You are born white, you are bearing a cross, something you're bearing, something is not right. What can we do from a practical point of view? Dr. Jacobs, you say that something has to be done with the leadership. What can be done, you think, to improve the situation of the Jewish community?
I think we have
steps. Do you have any?
Yes. So we have a program. It's called challengejewishleadership.org. That's our website, challengejewishleadership.org. And we have a program of finding people around the cities in America, around the Jewish communities in America, who have the courage to join us in an effort to challenge their local Jewish leaders. And what they will do after they talk to us or be on our webinars is, and sign up on the website, we will explain to them how to approach the Jewish leaders that you now have and how to challenge them. And I can't give all of our secrets away, but the first step is to say to them, you know, dear Rabbi, dear Rabbi, dear ADL head, dear Federation head, I'm in your constituency. I'm very concerned. I see pictures of Jews being beaten up in the streets. I see the Democratic Party elected officials using anti-Semitic memes. I see imams in mosques across America online preaching against Jews. I see people on the right also, the white supremacists. This is a new time. We are now in a new time. I want to know what the strategy should be. So let's engage in a discussion. Tell me what the strategy should be. So you're engaged. Then the second thing is you're going to get, if you join one of these teams, you're going to figure out a way to press the local Jewish leadership to do X. They haven't done X. Fight critical race theory harder, or name Ilan Omar when you say some people, you know, go after, whatever it is. Every community can do its own. I think the biggest one will be fight critical race theory that's coming to your neighborhood and will teach students that Jews are bad. And then gather up your steam and gather more and more people. And you will find that so many people, once you start to fight for something, will understand, yes, you're right, we have to fight for this. And it will grow, and it will grow. And that's what I think that people should do. If you're asking me, how do we stop the suicide of the West? It's too big for me to solve. I mean, there are wonderful people. And I read their books. I look and listen to their podcasts. I mean, Barry Weiss is this wonderful Jewish girl who quit the New York Times because it was anti-Semitic and started her own fight. There's Jonathan Haidt. There's a new group that I just met. I love them. They call themselves White Rose Magazine. Now, you know, the White Rose was a group of decent German Gentiles who, during Hitler, went out on the street with leaflets against Hitler. They called themselves the White. Of course, they killed them all, but they were wonderful. So this group in America is called the White Rose Magazine. It's a fantastic thing, and it's discussing all of the things that you say, all of the things that you know, from critical race theory to what's the matter with the West to what about our values, who are the Jews. So there's a lot of things boiling up from underneath, and if you know anybody who's watching this, they can connect with me, and I can guide them to these different sources.
Dr. Jacobs, this isn't our topic, but I feel that a conversation with a gentleman with an intellect, with an activist like you, we shouldn't omit to mention the state of Israel, the importance of the state of Israel for Jewry throughout the world and for American Jewry in particular. And I want to take off in one item that you mentioned. What is being taught to the young people that we are losing the next generations because of the information, the type of education they are receiving? You know, when you speak about Israel, Israelis and Arabs, you want to get together. Try to find out what is being taught in the Palestinian schools. What is being taught, this memory, you know, in television, when you see little children with a belt, with explosives, exalting martyrdom. This is how you want to end your life, recompensing, giving money, recognizing the families of those that died, killing others. You know, the teaching of the young children. I don't think that any kind of peace is going to come about unless there's a tremendous change. And you see, this is, I think, very important, the Abraham Accords, where people start looking at Israel, let us look at another aspect of Israel. Forget about the politics. Look at where Israel is and where we are today. Look at the hospitals in Israel. Look at the advances in technology, what Israel has done. Let us latch on to that progress and we will go ahead. So I think what you mentioned about teaching the children is so important in the United States. It is so important, I think, in the Middle East also. Any kind of peace agreement must include, first of all, a complete change of the curricula that is taught in their schools.
Well, I can tell you, there's a wonderful group in Israel run by a man named Itamar Marcus. It's called Palestinian Media Watch, and what he does is exactly what you asked. What he finds out what they teach. He sees the curricula. He sees in Palestinian culture, even the crossword puzzles, even the songs, even who they name their soccer fields after. It's all about jihad. It's all about jihad. And they're taught that they will go to heaven to kill a Jew. And as you know, the Palestinian administration, the PA, gives money. If you're going to kill a Jew, or try to, and you're in jail, they will support you. So you're absolutely right that the hatred education has to be stopped. Incitement to kill Jews has to be stopped. Now in America, I've been fighting this fight now for 10 years. In the high schools in America, the curricula is pro-Palestinian and anti-Israeli. The books that they get and the lesson plans that they get are often produced by curriculum mills that are either leftist or Arabist. In my own Jewish city of Newton, Massachusetts, a book called the Arab World Studies Notebook, which was funded by Saudi money, Saudi petrodollars, which taught the kids in my school down the street that Jews were killing Arab women in jails. Israeli Jews were killing Arab women in jails. This is preposterous. It's crazy. And they were teaching that. And we went and we screamed and we screamed and we screamed. And you know, the Jewish leadership of the city didn't want to have the fight. So it all was the grassroots groups. And we got that one out, but there's many, many more. And now in Massachusetts, the State Department of Education has curriculum guidelines that are terrible. Everybody in Massachusetts who goes to one of these schools with these curriculum is going to learn to hate Israel, and maybe also probably the Jewish kid next to him, because that Jewish kid next to him is a supporter most likely of this terrible, terrible, occupying, cruel state of Israel. So this is a horrific fight, and we can't get our leadership to fight it. And that's why we think we need to have a change in leadership.
Dr. Jacobs, it has been an honor to speak to you. I am certain that whoever is going to listen to what you had to say today will become much more enlightened about many issues, especially about the Jewish leadership, about anti-Semitism, about the situation of the Jews in the United States. I hope you will accept a future invitation, Dr. Jacobs, to speak to me again.
Anytime.
Thank you very much.
If you would permit me, I'd like to give my email address to any listener.
Please do.
It's Charles Jacobs, Charles Jacobs, Jacobs, 123@gmail.com. And if any of your listeners, have a question or want to be guided or have an answer.
Let me hear again. It was Charles, Charles, Jacobs, Jacobs, 123@gmail.com.
Perfect.
That's a way of getting in touch.
Yeah.
Dr. Jacobs, thank you very much. A great honor to be able to speak to you today.
It's my honor, Rabbi. It is my honor. Thank you. Shalom.